Mark your calendars because Cheekwood is throwing its very first community celebration, June 3rd through June 7th. And guess what? You're invited. Enjoy 5 days packed full of fun for all ages, from free yoga and $5 gardening classes to live music, puppets, and even a Taylor Swift dance party. And when the sun goes down, catch the Princess Bride under the stars or a Shakespearean cocktail crawl. It's all happening at Cheekwood. Learn more at cheekwood.org. Today on CityCast Nashville, I'm joined by Catherine McDonald, a sitting member of the Metro Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. We're digging into the sudden disappearance of the 9th Avenue bike lane downtown, why the new East Bank Boulevard might not have any bike lanes at all, and what needs to happen for cyclists to be safe in Nashville. It's Wednesday, May 7th. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Catherine, it's so good to have you on to talk about Bike Lane Gate.
Great to be here.
Social media blew up in the last couple of weeks surrounding the 9th Avenue bike lane. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, sure. This was a segment of new bike lane that went in on 9th Avenue. This is right across from the Nashville Yards development, which is a big kind of very pedestrian-focused development. And it was a bikeway that connected two existing bikeways on Church Street and Commerce Street. They put in a two-way cycle track that kind of connect those two existing bikeways and give people a way to access these new venues without having to use a car.
Nashville Yards is where the Pinnacle is, for folks at home that don't know. How long had this bike lane existed before it was removed?
From what I can tell, it was put in around the end of February. It was a two-way cycle track, so it was meant to be for people to go in both directions on the street. It was not very well protected, kind of like you might notice on Commerce. There were a few sort of widely spaced plastic flex posts, but not a lot of robust protection, which, I think people who use these routes, this is a big commuter area for people that are commuting downtown and people that are trying to get to destinations downtown. And after it was put in, there was some frustration that, why don't we do a better job protecting this? We know that plastic flex posts don't keep drivers out. So I think there was some room for discussion about if this was the best design for this bike lane. But I think we were all really happy to have this new connection between Church and Commerce and an area where there aren't a lot of bike lanes downtown.
Okay, but then who complained about this new bike lane?
No one in the community had really heard anything that was happening about this until it was just gone one day at the beginning of March. And no one really knew why. We started kind of, asking for reasons for this, talked with the council member for the district, who basically said that one of the residents in a nearby apartment building didn't know the bike lane was going in, was concerned about losing some street parking spaces, and had complained, which then led to the removal. You have these plans for bikeways, for sidewalks, for kind of good ways for people to get around that have been in place for years. This was a bike lane that had been planned since, before 2020. You can find plans from the development as well as other plans from the city that talk about having this bike lane connection be there. That's an important connection that all of a sudden just gets reversed and removed when one person that happens to live nearby and doesn't like it complained. So it sparked a lot of frustration, which ultimately ended up in a FOIA request to try to figure out, the emails and the communications that led to this. And what that basically revealed was that this went way deeper than I think any of us had anticipated or knew up to this point. I think everybody knew that, there was this tendency to take complaints over bike lanes, even from, one or two residents, and prioritize those over safe mobility for people in the community. But what we found out was that actually a group of lobbyists had met with the NDOT director, had threatened her that if they kept putting in bike lanes downtown, they would file state legislation to block the construction of bike lanes. And it was shortly after that meeting this bike lane was removed. What we also found in the FOIA request was an email from NDOT on March 12th to the same three lobbyists. Again, this is at a time when no one in the community had been consulted regarding this, but NDOT directly sent new striping plans for this street to the lobbyists, asking them for approval of new striping plans for the road that took out the bike lanes and added back some parking and loading space. So this was basically, allowing a group of lobbyists to make decisions on street safety. And that was pretty frustrating.
Well, I just want to inform our listeners at home. So FOIA, that you just referred to, stands for Freedom of Information Act. So someone made an inquiry into this and found all these emails. Who were these lobbyists?
The main ones that the email were sent to were two lobbyists from the 35 group and then the director of the Downtown Partnership. And then after that got circulated to pretty much every lobbyist in town, that were all pretty happy to see these bike lanes being removed.
Is the decision to let lobbyists have a say over something like street safety a normal thing?
No. So I think we all know that lobbyists have political power in this city. I think that's unavoidable. Yes, they're going to talk to council people, they're going to talk to the mayor's office. They are going to exert political power through different means. I have never heard of a city department basically abdicating decision-making authority over departmental decisions on road safety to lobbyists. And I think that, as far as I know, is unprecedented. The people that I have talked to kind of in this community who know a lot about urban planning and engineering were floored by this, essentially.
We reached out to NDOT for a statement, and this was their response. NDOT received inquiries regarding the 9th Avenue cycle track from a number of residents who were concerned about the loss of loading areas near the adjacent apartment and condominium buildings. Some of these complaints were received via lobbyists. After assessing the situation, NDOT decided to remove the cycle track as the infrastructure was neither recommended in Connect Downtown nor the 2022 Walk and Bike Plan, and did not align with the future implementation of Connect Downtown. Safety is always our top concern, but ensuring the quality of life is maintained for downtown residents is also a priority, and residents do need access to loading and unloading zones at the curb. Through Connect Downtown implementation, a comprehensive network of protected high-quality mobility lanes will be built out in the future. Let's turn our attention to the East Bank development. It seems like construction is finally underway on the non-stadium parts of the East Bank, Nashville's next great neighborhood. The plans include the East Bank Boulevard. How was this road initially pitched to the public?
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to basically build a new neighborhood from the ground up and decide what we want our city to look like. And so as part of this, you might recall a few years ago, we had the whole Imagine East Bank vision plan process. This was a massive community engagement effort. I think it went on for about 2 years. Thousands of people were involved in this, filling out surveys, going to meetings, really kind of talking through, what we wanted this neighborhood to look like. And so as part of that, Metro Planning, in addition to a lot of other stakeholders in the city, put together this Imagine East Bank vision plan. And this is available online. You can go and look at it on their website. People said they wanted affordable housing. They wanted a neighborhood that was built for Nashvillians, for the people who live here. They talked about, having a nice, accessible waterfront where you can take your kids down to the river with parks and greenways. And they talked about wanting safe multimodal connectivity as a very important priority that prioritizes the safety of people walking, biking, and using transit. So the East Bank Boulevard has been framed as basically the backbone of the East Bank. This is kind of the central street that runs through the entire neighborhood. It basically cuts this neighborhood in half. I think it was called the Spine Street when this was first presented as kind of the core business corridor. This is where all of the shops are, all the restaurants are, all of the bars, the sidewalk cafes. This is the place where everyone's going to want to go as part of the East Bank that kind of connects, the residential developments, the business developments. And this is supposed to be, kind of this model of a complete street and safe connectivity.
There was a planning meeting late last month for residents to comment on the current plans. What happened at that meeting?
So if you look at the Imagine East Bank Vision Plan, there are 3 concepts for this street in that plan. One is a concept that contains 6 lanes, so 2 lanes for vehicular traffic or cars, and then a dedicated bus lane in the middle. There were also 2 additional plans that contained a 4-lane cross-section one vehicular traffic lane, one bus lane, and then two different configurations of bike lanes. This was kind of the first chance that all of us got to see what the East Bank team had been working on kind of based on this vision since this vision plan was released back in 2022. And it became immediately very clear at this meeting that the East Bank team had basically thrown away all of the public input that had gotten us to this point and had decided to push ahead with this 6-lane design that really prioritizes car throughput over everything else. They presented the 2 4-lane designs that were in the Imagine East Bank vision plan as conceptual alternatives. They were kind of on one poster board off to the side. But the consultants admitted during the meeting that they're not even studying these designs, and they basically already selected the 6-lane design as the preferred alternative to move forward with. They have also only included these 6-lane designs in the online survey that is now open. So they're basically not even showing the public the options that people advocated very hard to get into this Imagine East Bank vision plan.
So just throwing out everything the community asked for.
That's really what it feels like. I think if you went to the meeting and you kind of heard the way that they were talking about this street and saw the designs up on the board of this massive, massive road, the minimum cross section they presented was 110 feet. Main Street in East Nashville is 80 feet.
Wow.
So this is a deadly road that we are building from scratch in this neighborhood where we can literally do anything. We know streets like this kill people. Right now, we've identified this high injury network of streets around our city that are deadly. And as part of the Vision Zero process, are trying to reconfigure those streets to make them somewhat survivable. So to throw all of that away and then to build this massive, massive street through a brand new neighborhood.
When you could do anything you want, dream up the best case scenario. Right. And then throw it out. Wow.
And we're building West End Avenue as like our model of a complete street through a walkable neighborhood.
Why would bike lanes no longer be included? Why would they just throw them out?
Great question. So what they are saying is that they are providing kind of secondary bike lanes on all the other streets of the neighborhood. Why would we need bike lanes on East Bank Boulevard when you can bike on any other street? Which is not entirely true. So the East Bank Boulevard is kind of the main north-south connection through this neighborhood. Again, that's where all the destinations are. That's where the businesses are, the restaurants are. People should be able to walk and bike there just like they can drive there. The other problem with that is that the other 2 north-south streets that are proposed through the East Bank, one is 2nd Avenue, which we know is the one that goes right next to the new stadium. That's going to be closed for all events. If you've ever been, anywhere in the vicinity of a Titans game,
can't go through.
That's not going to be an accessible route for anybody trying to get their kids to school or trying to get to the park or to the playground. The other option is this new greenway they're proposing, Waterside Drive, which will be kind of the continuation of Davidson Street, kind of from Shelby Park. It sounds great in theory. The problem with that is that it requires moving railroad tracks, like the CSX tracks, which we know are impossible to work with, to even get built. So who knows what the timeline for that is or if that's even going to happen. So essentially, you're left with 0 north-south biking connections through this brand new neighborhood that we're building from scratch.
Fun. So we've also heard that bike lanes had to be removed because of potential pressure from the state. Why would the state care if we had bike lanes or not?
I mean, I think it's part of this whole misconception that bike lanes are bad for business, that bike lanes don't move people through the city. I think it's the same reason why the Downtown Partnership and like the business interests downtown and the lobbyists don't support bike lanes. I think it's all part of this misconception. There is abundant evidence that bike lanes move more people than car lanes do. If you want to move a lot of people, you do it through bike lanes, bus lanes, and sidewalks. You don't do it through car lanes because they're the least efficient way to get around. Bike lanes are also really good for business. This has been done in multiple other cities. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You can just look at the evidence that exists that when people make cities accessible for people walking and biking, business goes through the roof. It's not good for business to have traffic snarled in all the streets outside their windows. Nobody wants to go sit on a sidewalk cafe on West End or Gallatin. And so not providing access to people And, just kind of building this deadly car sewer of a road is not going to be good for anybody.
Cowboy Up Nashville! Music City Rodeo, Nashville's first and only PRCA rodeo, is coming to Bridgestone Arena for 3 unforgettable nights featuring the world's top pro rodeo athletes and live music from Nashville legends. Reba on May 29th, Jelly Roll on May 30th, and Tim McGraw on May 31st. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, each night ticketed separately. For more information, visit MusicCityRodeo.com. If you haven't heard yet, Cheekwood is hosting their very first community celebration, June 3rd through June 7th. That's 5 days packed full of fun for all ages. During the day, you can come and enjoy free yoga with Small World Yoga. Explore a musical petting zoo brought to you by our friends at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. Catch performances by the Nashville Opera or the Nashville Puppet Truck. There will also be a friendship bracelet making station, animals from the Nashville Zoo. Oh, and how could I forget? $5 gardening classes for the whole family. Then, as the sun sets, grab dinner from one of the many food trucks and watch The Princess Bride under the stars. Or sip your way through a Shakespearean cocktail crawl, courtesy of the Nashville Shakespeare Festival. You can also catch an evening with Grammy Award winner Rodney Crowell, dance to music from Sonny Dada and his 12-piece band, or sing along to everyone's favorite Beatles songs with Forever Abbey Road. There's something for everyone of all ages, so come on by. Learn more at cheekwood.org. This Mother's Day, if you're fortunate enough to have a great mom in your life, do not forget to call her like I did last year. To make it up to my mom this year, I am showing up with an Aura digital frame fully loaded with adorable photos of, well, me. I picked out the most ridiculous photos I could find, like baby me eating a houseplant or that awkward senior pic where I'm hugging a fence for some reason. After we have a good laugh, I'll show my mom how easy it is to swap out the pictures so she can add in shots of her grandkids too. Aura Frames was named the best digital photo frame by Wirecutter and featured in 495 gift guides last year. I know my mom will love it, and no matter who you give it to, they will too. Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. For a limited time, listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver mat frame. That's auraframes.com. Promo code CityCast. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. I'd like to turn to some good news, possibly. There is a new bike lane going down on Antioch Pike. The stretch of road is in front of 3 schools, and volunteers are using recycled tires to protect the lanes. How are people reacting to that?
In general, people are excited for any new bike lanes, especially when they're on deadly streets like Antioch Pike, and when they're close to schools and destinations like that. I think it's hugely important to build these connections. One of the conversations that we're having in Nashville and kind of continue to have is, what are the best ways to protect our bike lanes? For a long time, you've seen these kind of plastic flex posts go up that, nobody really likes. They're not true physical protection. They're basically designed so drivers can drive over them and not hurt their cars. They're kind of like a visual deterrent. I like the description of vertical paint. So it's kind of like it's paint, but it's a little more easy to see. But you can drive straight over it if you want to. The movement from advocates and from the community has been to, use things that are harder, like concrete, that, would actually keep a car from going into a bike lane. I haven't seen the tires myself. I'm a little concerned that, they're not going to be as robust as something like concrete or steel, and maybe a little too easy for drivers to run over. It seems like we're always kind of trying to balance like things that provide some level of protection, but without making drivers too mad. So I'm guessing it's somewhere kind of in that balance that we're trying to strike with these tires. All in favor of using recycled tires.
Right, absolutely. But yeah.
I'll check it out and let you know what I think.
Okay, yeah, circle back and let us know. Well, so you sit on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. What is the role of the commission?
The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission was established last year through an ordinance. It was actually reestablished after it had been kind of dissolved in a previous administration. This is kind of the second reincarnation of the BPAC, or what we call it. So it's a Metro commission that serves to advise the mayor's office, Metro departments, and Metro Council on issues regarding walking and biking. We're not a rule-making body, but we can kind of give advice, make recommendations, advocate for certain things that we think are important to walking and biking in Nashville.
Okay, well, so then on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you describe the current bike infrastructure here in Nashville?
Yeah, so I've been here for 11 years. I will say we have made progress in that time, but it's been very piecemeal. So I'd probably still have to give it around like a 3, maybe. I think, Nashville, we unfortunately score very low on a lot of walking and biking indices. If you look kind of nationwide, we're always, sort of at the bottom of kind of safe biking infrastructure. We just reapplied for a bicycle-friendly community status this past year, and we got our status renewed, which was good, but it's only at the bronze level, which is where we were, when we first did this like 10 years ago. So I think we're making slow progress. The problem is that we keep sort of building things piecemeal. We do a block at a time, someone complains, we take it out. We do another block, we don't protect it, people park in it. And so we're not doing a great job of building like cohesive networks. And that's what it takes really if you want to make it easier for people to actually bike as a way to get around.
So was your commission then super excited about the East Bank Boulevard?
So we actually got involved in this conversation back in February and passed a resolution to call for the East Bank team to even present the 2 4-lane options at this public meeting. They were not even planning to present those as options in the meeting. So we passed a resolution that was also co-signed by the Vision Zero Advisory Committee to just get to present these as options. So that's where we started from. And we're planning on discussing this again at our May 19th meeting as well. Have invited the East Bank team to join us, answer some questions about this boulevard.
Gotcha. So what neighborhoods are doing well? Let's celebrate these things. And then tell me, where are we falling short?
I mean, I live in East Nashville, and I think, we don't have a ton of dedicated bike lanes. We have some, really great ones like Davidson Street is a street that I use to take my kids to school every day. We have the pedestrian bridge, which is, an amazing connection across the river. But we have a lot of neighborhood streets that are, kind of moderately bikeable. We've been doing a lot with traffic calming as well, which helps to kind of slow down cars and, make things a little bit safer for people that are walking and biking. So I'm able, in our neighborhood to take both of my kids to school by bike and then to cross the river and then to commute to Vanderbilt. There are, routes that you can find and routes that you can choose that are safe and that are getting safer. The redesign of Demumbrian Hill this past year was a major step forward. This is the second bike lane in Nashville. It's protected by concrete curbs. And it was a block that was, very unsafe, always blocked by cars. It's the only block where I've ever been hit by a car driver in my 15 years of bike commuting. But again, we're kind of doing these things in small pieces.
And there's a newly protected lane on 12th South?
Yeah, so 12 South was the first concrete protected bike lane in Nashville, and it's fantastic. It's, concrete planters. It's a pretty large stretch of bikeway that really kind of shows what we can do. The problem with that, again, is that there's not a lot of safe connections from 12 South. So it's great if you're going somewhere that's, within a few blocks, but it's not well connected to the Gulch, it's not well connected to Demumbrian, or a lot of the other kind of major routes in the city.
Well, we got to shout out Mayor Freddie O'Connell, who ran on a very bike-friendly platform. So despite these recent scandals, is his administration making it safer to bike in Nashville?
I think so. I think we all want to see more action.
Gotcha. Okay.
He, again, ran on a very kind of bike and multimodal friendly platform. We passed the Choose How You Move referendum this past fall, which was huge. I think that is an incredible mandate to make our city safer for walking, biking, taking the bus, and using other means to get around. We have Connect Downtown, which is, again, an amazing plan for like building out this bikeway network downtown. So again, I think we have a lot of great plans in place. I think we have a lot of engagement from the public saying, we want this, let's build it. But I think when it comes down to it, we just have to build it. We just have to, to start building this network and not pay attention to, the feedback from a couple of people and undo progress that we've already made.
You obviously bike a ton yourself, as you said. Where is your favorite place to ride for fun?
And we love the Shelby Bottoms Greenway. I take my kids, around our neighborhood a lot by bike. And that Greenway is awesome. It connects you to a beautiful park, the nature center, the new nature playground over there is really cool. You can go all the way up to like Two Rivers Park. You can get to Percy Priest Dam. That whole Greenway is really a gem, and it's really beautiful.
I agree. I love it so much. Last question for you. We're putting you in charge of our bike infrastructure, and you get a magic wand. What's the first thing you would magically fix overnight?
I would build out the entire Connect Downtown network with high quality, concrete protected bike lanes. Give people a very visible idea of what it's like to have a safe bikeway network. I think that would spark an explosion in people biking, understanding what it's like to have safe spaces to bike, understanding what it's like to be able to get to work, to get to school, to get to the restaurants, and, to use a bike to get around downtown without fearing for your life.
I grew up here, but lived in New York and biked all over New York City. And then the second I moved back to Nashville, I have completely stopped biking because, to be honest, I feel really quite scared.
Yep.
If people do want to be brave and try it, like myself, I'm ready to hop back on. Where should I go to get started?
Yeah, awesome question. For me, I started biking to work in residency when I lived in Chicago, because it was the fastest way to get to the hospital. So it's just a very practical decision at that point. I wasn't, trying to be a radical and try to bike places. It was like, this makes the most sense for me to bike around. And so I biked all through residency in Chicago and then in Boston, just because there was infrastructure and it made sense as a way for me to get to work. I moved to Nashville and it took me a full year before I started biking here. And that first ride, I still remember, was terrifying. I planned out my route. I was trying to figure out, how do I deal with this gap? How do I deal with gap? This part's closed for construction. How do I get around that? I went with a group of people, which is something that I would recommend doing if it's kind of your first time, especially your first time commuting or trying out a new route. I did it on Labor Day, and so it was a holiday. There wasn't a lot of traffic.
Smart.
And just kind of tried out this route, which ended up being my current route to work, which is going across the pedestrian bridge, going up to Bun Brand and then Music Row. And it is, it's a bike route. There are bike lanes. It is a dedicated, commuter route. And it was terrifying the first time. Just navigating all of that and figuring out how to get through intersections. What do you do when the bike lane's closed? How do you merge with traffic? How do you deal with cars in the bike lane? It's a huge, huge barrier to entry right now for even people who want to bike. So my goal, I think, with building out, safer, protected bikeways, these should be facilities that anybody can use. You can bike with your kids on them. You can bring your mom on them. Like anybody, you don't have to be an expert. So I'd say starting out, pick a route. You can start on a greenway. Our greenways are great. They're just, again, not super connected. Start on a nice protected bike lane like Davidson Street. And if you are, trying out a new route, not really sure what the best way to go is, bring a group with you. It's always easier with a crew. It's worth it, but it should not be this hard.
Are there other bike groups or clubs? My parents actually met at a singles bike club in Florida. I wonder what we have going on here in Nashville.
Definitely. Yeah, there are a lot of great bike groups. Nashville Bike Fun is a really good organization that's run by my friend KJ, who helps kind of get people out on bikes. So she does everything from teaching kids how to bike to helping adults kind of get more comfortable biking on the street. And she does group rides as well. The Music City Dope Peddlers is a really awesome group that does bike rides every Friday through town. So you can kind of get used to like more urban routes, but like with a big group that feels very safe. And then there are a lot of other kind of group rides for people that kind of want to go fast and do kind of more like road riding kind of things.
Catherine, it really has been a pleasure speaking to you. You've definitely taught us a lot about biking in Nashville and given us better resources to feel more empowered to do so. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!